Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Coming Home, Survive and Thrive in Homeschooling. Today I'm talking about being the parent your child needs. Firstly, I'm going to be talking about parenting with young children and then with adult children. Then I'll reflect on what to do if you're the adult child with a parent who just wants to help. This is a 101 on parenting and not a deep dive. And it is in response to two parenting examples I saw yesterday, one in the departure lounge at the airport and the second on the plane. There is much that could be written and spoken about based on my observations yesterday and subsequent thinking, but this is not today's purpose. Some definitions before we begin. When I use the term discipline, I am referring to a well-ordered life with consequences for choices, not necessarily to be associated with corporal punishment. Unfortunately, it can be heard in this way, and if from a Christian perspective, often associated with the proverb, spare the rod and spoil the child. So using the example of God as our Heavenly Father, or in a modern sense, the perfect parent, who is slow to anger and swift to bless, abundant kindness and forgiveness, but allowing consequences for wrongdoing. This was how I viewed my parenting whenever I could during my parenting years. I did not get everything right, I can tell you that. And my children most certainly can. The humble authority of a parent is the most basic starting point when you start to have your babies. It is very easy to have absolute authority over your child and for it to be quite dysfunctional. So what happened on the plane? There were young parents with their 2.5-year-old little boy with them, and I know he was 2.5 because that was what was told to the steward when he was discussing with them how they were going to secure his seatbelt to theirs. During the flight, which wasn't that long really, the little boy moved from parent to parent, which meant he went across the aisle and back again, and this is in spite of the overhead lights and the odd announcement from the steward and the stewardess advising us to remain seated with our belts on. And they talked to him about what was happening, etc. And then came the time to descend with the last and final announcement that you must be seated with your seatbelt on, and I could hear the mother behind me. Rather than telling her little boy that that's what he needed to do, she was asking his permission. Would you like me to put your belt on now? And she said this several times, when really what she needed to do was instruct him that he must sit down now, it's time to put your seatbelt on. There was nothing to be discussed. It was a safety instruction. The child needed to know that, and there was no permission to be asked from the child. And I could hear them saying, in their passive desperation, and to their credit, they weren't getting upset with the child, but I could hear them starting to say, oh, the steward's coming up the aisle. He's going to tell you to sit down and put your belt on. And sure enough, that's exactly what the steward did. He responded to what I think he could see the parent's need was to intervene and take authority over the child because the parents weren't willing to do that. They abdicated their parental responsibility to a total stranger because they needed somebody else to do what they should have and could have done. And the steward very kindly told the little boy that it was time to sit down and he had to have a seatbelt on now because the plane was going to land and it was to keep him safe. So the little boy sat down and that's what happened. Fortunately, the personality of the little boy was one of a placid nature, so he never threw a wobbly or protested in it, he just did it. And I knew as I was hearing all this that the parents needed to parent their child, and that this small example within this parent's experience of raising their child was what happens to them every day. This little boy was only 2.5. He had no knowledge of why it was necessary to put a belt on and why it was time to sit down now. That's the parent's role, to keep the child safe and insist on boundaries that keep the child safe. That little boy needed the discipline of his parents to guide him in that. Going on in that family's life, if that is going to be their modality of parenting, they are going to hit rocky water at regular times, because children need to be parented. They do not need your permission to guide them or insist on what needs to happen in life. You are the adult and they are the child. You have mature thinking. A child, by definition, does not. Adults think objectively. They know why it's time to put a seatbelt on. Children are concrete thinkers. He doesn't even know what a seatbelt's for. You have life experience. They do not. Be the parent your child needs. This modern parenting style could be a reaction to the previous generational style. I don't know. Obviously, it's inappropriate to ask them. I'm just the observer. But if you grew up saying, when I'm a parent, I'm not going to do such and such with my child, you may have fallen into this trap too. There were certainly things that I had said, and my husband, well, when we have kids, we're not going to do such and such. But if you want to change something in your parenting, you need to know your why. For most parenting traditions, there is a very good reason as to why things have just been the same generation after generation. If you are Christian, you'd better be sure that any changes you want to make in parenting are from a biblical worldview and not borrowed from humanism with their belief in the essential goodness of a child. This parenting origin could be from modern philosophies of not wanting to damage their little egos, or needing to be liked as a parent, or perhaps confusing the role of a parent with being a friend. These three possibilities have books written on them. I would suggest that the transitioning of authority to guidance should be happening by the time your child is in their early teens, if not a little bit before. The ratio to authority and guidance needs to continue to change until by the time he is 18, your adult child really needs to be practically autonomous. Now, having a regular self-audit as a mother or a homeschooler will naturally happen if you see what you are doing as a mother and a homeschooling parent as your career choice, rather than just something you are just doing because I'm a parent. The chances are much better that you're going to be aware of character traits that need to be changed, because part of having a career is that you do career development. You are highly motivated to be better at what you are doing. So, as your child grows older, saying because I said so is not good enough. Sometimes feeling stressed, and that's what you need to say. But try to be able to follow that up with, we will talk about this later, but right now you just need to do as I've asked you to do. Saying because I said so frustrated me as a young teen. And as a young teen, I needed to be talked to more about some of the rationale as to what my parents were doing and why. I was not being argumentative or belligerent. But I think an older child may need to be respectfully included in the rationale, with, of course, the authority remaining with the parent. I do believe in including or asking for the input of a child, but mostly a parent just needs to make decisions, leaving inclusion for appropriate times, and not every time or even most of the time, especially when your children are little. Just tell them what to do. That's what they need to hear. That's just what a child needs to know. They expect that and they need you to follow it through. Dr. James Dobson used the example of children playing confidently to a boundary when they knew where the fence was in the playground. So this increases and encourages discipline by having clear boundaries around your children, taking that metaphor and using it to apply to the way you live your life in your family. Part of parenting is to have boundaries with consequences when they are crossed. It's part of the discipline of family life. It is normal for a child to check a boundary is still there. He will do this regularly and most likely at an inconvenient time. It is vital for the child to find that boundary still in place. Boundaries are shifted either by the child, which is inappropriate and poor parenting, or widened by the parent. Again, poor parenting to not move boundaries when it's the right time. The second example in parenting observed yesterday, and it's about being motivated by love but not justifying interfering in an adult child's life. So this is what happened. I was sitting with an older lady and she was telling me about her daughter, who she was very concerned about because she was very overweight. And I could tell from her description that it was not just a little bit, she was morbidly obese. She was worried that it would be affecting her heart health, diabetes, and the pressure that it was putting on her knees. She was already having trouble walking. Now, her daughter is in her mid-50s. She's a highly trained professional. Her daughter is a vet. So her daughter is intelligent. Do you really think her daughter needed to be told that she was overweight, that she had potential health issues? No, she doesn't. The daughter knows this already. But motivated by love for her daughter, the mother didn't realize that she was interfering inappropriately in her adult child's life. So one day recently, her daughter had had a little bit too much to drink, and the mother told me that she was trying to talk to her again. Key clue, again, it wasn't the first time. Turned around and swore at her mother about to leave her beep beep alone, and that her mother got such a shock with that because all she was doing was trying to help her daughter. Now, I knew from what she was telling me that this mother expected me to agree with her, but I wasn't going to do that. I just responded in a way that would be natural in woman-to-woman conversation, that I felt that her daughter is an adult and she already knows she has a problem, but she's probably going to need to be told this by her doctor. Somebody who is in authority over her, whom she is going to respect and listen to. And then not only will the doctor be telling her, but also helping her with some solutions. And that I said too that I felt that my children were adults, that we had done our best to raise them, and now they had to take responsibility for their decisions and take the consequences with them. And a look crossed her face. One, I could see she was surprised at my response about that. And then very quickly, secondly, I could see that she actually agreed with me and she just needed someone to tell her that. Now, somebody dear to me once said, how much do you not love someone to not talk about something that if they're making choices that are going to affect their lives in a bad way? And I needed to think about that because at the time I was more of the opinion that if this adult needed advice, they would ask me for it, even if they were my adult child. But I think that needed serious consideration. And so I've changed somewhat from how I would tackle a problem like this. Then there obviously needs to be some balance, and it's situational, and only you as the parent knows when it's time to maybe step forward in respect. So I would suggest, if you're not sure whether you should be talking to your adult child about something, ask permission to talk about whatever it is that is concerning you. So, for instance, using the example of this older lady with her adult child, and I remind you, she was in her mid-50s. Honey, I'm a little bit concerned about your weight. Is it okay if I talk to you about this? And then take it from there. And if the adult child says, no, Mum, just thanks, but no, then just back off. You've tried. You've got a very clear message that she does not wish to talk about it. In this situation, actually in any situation, your adult child's needs outweigh your need to have to talk to her because you're so concerned about her health. And I think another measuring stick in a situation like this is if you wouldn't talk to another adult in this way, like if you have an overweight friend and you wouldn't talk to her in this way, why would you think you could talk to your adult child like that? Being the parent does not give you the right to interfere in your adult child's life. And I would re-emphasize there that there needs to be the patience of Job and the wisdom of Solomon in trying to figure out what to do. Now, a different situation of an adult with a new parent, we'll say. Let's say you've had a recent grandchild. Again, my suggestions to you would be that when there is a new grandchild, to make yourself available to help, and the chances are your help is just going to be so welcomed, but to give advice only when it's asked for. Those two things don't necessarily come together. If you've been given permission to help, it does not mean that that gives you the right to give a young mum some advice. Yes, the new mum might be better off if she'd only just ask, but she may not. The new mum needs to learn confidence in her mothering, and you're stepping in to show her something she needs to know, by your definition, undermines her fragile confidence. When she's in tears because baby won't stop crying, or because she hasn't slept much, by all means, step forward in grace and gentleness. Give her a hug and lovingly send her off to bed while you walk the baby. Learn to discern when help is really needed or whether you need to be needed. What is best for the mother and her baby is the priority and not necessarily what you think she should do. Parenting fashions change with each generation. New parents will do things differently. You probably did too. And on to the third aspect of parenting today, which relates to the grown adult talking to the adult child, except I'm flipping it around. What to do with your parent or parents if you feel they're still treating you as a child sometimes or overstepping their role in your life. I know family relationships can be complicated, but it's up to you as the adult child to do something about it if you don't want to be treated in a certain way anymore. This has probably been going on for a long time. It's just been the family habit. Just because you want to change, don't expect your parent to know that it needs change. It's likely to come as a shock to your parent, and most likely there will be turbulent waters ahead as you navigate these things in your life together. So speak the truth in love. Your parents' bad behavior is no excuse to hurt them with yours. Just because it's the truth, it doesn't mean you need to be cruel. If you need counselling to work out how to deal with this with your parents, because it can get really complicated, that goes back just years and years, go and get some help. Don't leave it until you say something that you might regret. All right, what to do with all of the above? To recap, if you're a parent with young children, learn godly parenting. If you have examples around you of older families where you can see they've done a good job and you respect what they've done as parents, go and ask questions and listen to them. Know that you cannot possibly be an experienced parent when you're not experienced, and have the humility to seek good advice. Most young parents these days have had little to no experience with babies and young children, which is very different throughout the millennia when parents just knew what to do because there were always parents with families, babies, children around them. You grew up knowing how to care for a baby. My husband and I appreciated the aforementioned Dr. James Dobson in our early parenting years. We did not like the Growing Kids God's Way series, however. And again, I recommend Dr. Jordan Peterson's perspectives, and there will be other parenting help available too. Know that only God has the full truth. Any parenting guru presenting him or herself as the truth should be avoided. Actually, run away. What else? Think about what needs to be changed. You already know if anything I've said today has struck a chord with you. Be brave and face up to what you need to do, making changes little by little. Everyone involved will benefit when improvement in our character occurs. It's hard, but the rewards are immense. I hope this has given you things to think about. I hope it's been helpful to you. If I can be of assistance to you, I am available for homeschool consultations and for counselling. If it's the deep, serious counselling that can often come with some of the complications in family life, I will soon redirect you to somebody who is more skilled and experienced than me. So if you need to reach out to me to discuss something, you can find me via my website, cominghomeinfo.com. Please pass this podcast around because you know there are parents who need to hear what we've been talking about today. All right, folks, I hope you have a good week, a fulfilling week, and enjoy your children. Bye-bye for now.